Are your absolute best-selling products actually losing you money? I know, it sounds like a totally ridiculous question, right? How in the world could a top-selling product be a financial drain? Well, what if I told you that the very accounting systems companies rely on every single day might be hiding massive, profitability-killing secrets right in plain sight? Okay, let's dive into this, because today we're uncovering the hidden flaws of traditional accounting. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to explore a real game changer in the accounting world, activity-based costing, or ABC for short. Think of activity-based costing as the magnifying glass we need to solve the ultimate profitability mystery. We're going to look way past the surface-level numbers and become true profit detectives. Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the traditional costing flaw. Second, introducing activity-based costing. Third, the 5 steps of ABC. Fourth, calculating true profit margins. And finally, number 5, the limitations of ABC. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the traditional costing flaw. We really have to start by understanding why traditional accounting methods might be leading otherwise brilliant managers completely astray. Traditional cost systems generally rely on really blunt, volume-based metrics to allocate all of a company's overhead costs to its products. They usually just look at direct labor hours or machine hours. But think about that for a second. Does a highly complex custom product always use more machine hours than a simple standard one? Not necessarily, right? Yet traditional costing forces all those complex overhead costs into a single, plant-wide rate. Activity-based costing, on the other hand, is a precision tool. It uses numerous overhead cost pools and unique activity measures that track actual cause and effect relationships. Which brings us perfectly to part 2, introducing activity-based costing. So how exactly does this precision tool work? Well, the core concept of ABC revolves around what we call an activity cost pool. You can just picture this as a literal cost bucket. Instead of one giant, messy pool of overhead costs, ABC identifies specific events that cause costs to occur, like setting up a machine or processing a customer order. Whenever an activity consumes overhead resources, the costs tied to that activity get tossed right into that specific, dedicated bucket. Now here is the kicker, and it's absolutely crucial. ABC is highly strategic about what goes into these buckets. Unlike traditional costing, ABC actually excludes certain costs from being assigned to products altogether. Namely, organization-sustaining costs, like the factory rent or the CEO's salary, and idle capacity costs. Why? Because these costs are going to happen regardless of which specific products you make. If a product doesn't directly cause the cost, the product shouldn't be penalized with it in your internal reporting. Makes sense, right? To keep all these activities organized, manufacturing companies using ABC typically classify them into a 5-level hierarchy. It's kind of like a giant puzzle. First, we have unit-level activities. These are tasks performed every single time a unit is produced, like the power to run a machine. Second are batch-level activities. These happen every time a batch is processed. Think setting up equipment, regardless of the batch size. Third, product-level activities. These relate to specific products, like a custom design. Fourth, customer-level activities, which are things done to support specific customers, like a sales call. And finally, organization-sustaining activities, which just maintain the broader facility. Moving right along to part 3, the 5 steps of ABC. Now that we've got the theory down, it's time to see this in practice. We're going to investigate a real-world puzzle with our case study today, Baxter Battery. Baxter makes 2 types of batteries, but recently they reported their first financial loss ever, and management is absolutely panicking. To find out where the money is going, we're going to follow this definitive 5-step roadmap. First, define the pools and measures. Second, assign overhead in the first stage. Third, calculate rates. Fourth, assign costs to products in the second stage. And fifth, prepare the reports. Let's walk through it together. Step 1. Baxter's ABC team defines their specific activity cost pools. They settle on 5 buckets: customer orders, design changes, order size, customer relations, and an other bucket. Now that other bucket, it's incredibly important. It catches all those organization-sustaining and idle capacity costs we just talked about, making sure they aren't unfairly pushed onto the actual battery products. In Step 2, the first stage allocation, Baxter distributes its $22 million in total overhead across those 5 buckets using a detailed matrix based on actual employee data. For instance, customer orders absorbs just over $4.5 million of the overhead, while design changes takes about $3 million. So we've officially sorted the massive overhead pie into specific, manageable pieces. Moving to step 3, we calculate the activity rates. It's simple math, but it's powerful logic. We just take the total cost accumulated in each bucket and divide it by the total activity level for that bucket. So if the design changes bucket holds $3 million and Baxter made 4,000 design changes this year, we just divide those numbers. That tells us exactly how much a single design change costs the company in overhead. Step 4 is where the magic really happens. This is the second stage allocation, where we assign these costs to the products themselves. Baxter has 2 products, the SureStart battery, which is a standard model requiring 0 custom design, and the Long Life battery, which is a deluxe model requiring heavy custom design work. Traditional costing would just look at the high production volume of SureStarts and unfairly dump most of the overhead right onto them. But ABC looks at actual consumption. Because Long Life demands all the design changes, ABC assigns those specific design overhead costs strictly to the Long Life batteries. Which takes us to part 4, calculating true profit margins. This brings us to step 5, preparing the management reports. It's time for Baxter's management to face the music. Let's zoom in on one specific customer, Acme Auto Parts. Under ABC, we don't just guess what Acme costs us to serve, we track their literal footprint. Acme placed exactly 12 orders. They required 4 custom design changes for their Long Life batteries, and their production run consumed exactly 448 machine hours. Because we calculated our specific activity rates back in step 3, we know precisely how much overhead to charge Acme for those 12 orders and those 4 custom designs. And here is the punchline. When Baxter Battery tallies up the sales revenue from Acme Auto Parts and deducts all the direct costs, plus the highly accurate, newly allocated ABC indirect costs, the true customer margin for Acme Auto Parts is exactly $384. Seriously, just $384. Management can finally see exactly who's making the money, who's losing the money, and what specific activities are bleeding their profits dry. The mystery of their first ever loss is officially solved. Finally, let's wrap up with part 5, the limitations of ABC. Now, as incredibly powerful as this is, a quick reality check is in order. ABC is a fantastic tool, for sure, but it's not without its trade-offs. First, it requires substantial resources to implement and maintain. Interviewing employees, tracking data, updating rates, it's expensive and it takes a lot of time. Second, you are going to face internal resistance. Managers who thought their departments were highly profitable under the old system might suddenly look pretty bad under ABC, and they will fight those unfamiliar numbers. And third, ABC does not conform to generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. Because it selectively excludes certain costs, like that factory rent, you just can't use it for your official external reporting to investors. So you basically have to maintain 2 completely separate costing systems. But listen, despite those limitations, the payoff can be huge. Finding out which products are secretly bleeding cash and which customers are your true champions, that's the exact kind of insight that turns a failing year into a massive, undeniable success. So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Do you actually know what your true costs are? Or is your accounting system hiding the truth? The next time you look at a profit report, ask yourself, are we just spreading overhead around like peanut butter? Or do we actually know the cause and effect of every single dollar we spend? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep digging into those numbers, and I'll see you next time.